As we've already talked about, some picture books look like fine art. They're detailed, they're painterly, they're the kind of thing you'd expect to see hanging in a gallery while someone strokes their chin and says, fascinating. And then some picture books look like, well, let's just say they look a little less polished. Some have bold, traditional patterns that feel straight out of a folk tale. Some look like a child drew them on purpose, and some feel like they belong in an animated movie, full of wacky expressions and exaggerated everything. Hey everyone, I'm Nick. This is Dr. Cranky Pants Reads, and today we're talking about folk art, naive art, and cartooning in picture books. So let's start with folk art, where books that utilize this style carry generations of culture, because it's really not just an illustration style, it's a literal cultural time capsule. These books often pull from traditional art techniques, storytelling motifs, and design elements that have been passed down for generations. This style connects picture books to history, heritage, and specific artistic traditions, making them feel deeply rooted in place and culture. For an example of this, let's look at Dulari Devi's Following My Paintbrush. Dulari Devi is a Mithila artist, and her book uses traditional Indian folk painting techniques to tell her life story. The intricate patterns, bold outlines, and rich colors aren't just pretty. They're deeply tied to cultural artistic traditions. If you're trying to figure out how to spot folk art in picture books, they're highly decorative, patterned, and stylized. Folk art doesn't just show a scene, it celebrates it with intricate details. It also features bold, flat colors with strong outlines. These colors pop, and everything is framed with clear, really confident lines. It's rooted in cultural tradition. Like, if the illustrations look like they belong in a historical art form, because they do, it's folk art. Illustrators love it because it preserves artistic traditions while making them accessible to new generations. It creates books that feel deeply meaningful and rooted in history while standing out from other picture books with unique handcrafted designs. If a book looks like it could double as a piece of traditional artwork, folk art is behind it. Now let's talk about naive art, or when simplicity is truly the whole point. Because every once in a while, you'll see a picture book and you'll think, wait, is this intentionally rough looking? Why, yes. Yes, it is. Naive art embraces childlike simplicity, flat perspectives, uneven proportions, wobbly lines, not because the illustrator can't draw better, but because this is the style. For an example, let's turn to Lisa DeSimine's Tulip Seas America. DeSimine's skies don't look like real skies, and her landscapes don't follow perspective rules, but that's really what makes them feel so direct and expressive. If you're trying to think through how to identify naive art in picture books, look for flat or distorted perspectives. There's not going to be any of those fancy 3D illusions here. Things just sit on the page however they want. Additionally, look for simple, childlike figures. Characters might have basic shapes, dot eyes, and uneven proportions. You're going to see bright, bold colors with minimal shadings. There's not really going to be soft gradients or delicate shading here, just straight up color. Illustrators love it because it feels immediate, raw, and expressive. It matches a child's perspective, making books feel more personal. It proves that you don't have to draw perfectly to tell a great story. If a book looks like a very talented 6-year-old illustrated it, but in an intentional way, naive art is at play. Now let's talk cartooning, or when picture books go full Saturday morning animation. Cartooning throws realism out the window in favor of exaggerated expressions, playful movement, and strong personality. Cartoon-style illustrations feel like they could be animated at any moment, and sometimes they actually are. Let's look at Vera Brosgil's Leave Me Alone. The bold outlines, exaggerated facial expressions, and kinetic energy make this book feel alive, loud, and full of action. There's a couple of different ways to spot cartooning in a picture book. Look for exaggerated proportions as well as expressions. If we're seeing big eyes, stretched out limbs, and characters that practically vibrate with energy, cartooning's probably at play. Look for strong, clean outlines. Lines are bold and confident, making everything easier to read. Additionally, movement and humor, these are key. Even if characters aren't moving, they feel like they are. Illustrators love it because it makes books feel fun, dynamic, and energetic. It connects with kids instantly since many are already familiar with cartoons and allows for huge, exaggerated emotions, making the storytelling extra engaging. If a book looks like it's seconds away from being animated, cartooning is driving the show. Now, let's talk about how to tell these styles apart in picture books, because you might find yourself flipping through a book and want to figure out which style it's using. So, here's how we're going to break it down. Does it look like a piece of traditional cultural artwork? Then automatically, folk art. Does it look intentionally childlike with flat perspectives and simple shapes? Naive art. And does it look like it should have a Netflix animated series already? That's cartooning. Either way, these styles embrace bold, expressive simplicity, whether through cultural tradition, childlike creativity, or straight up comic energy. And that's a wrap. We've now covered all the major art styles in picture books, from realism to abstract, expressionist chaos to playful cartooning. But before we move on, let's talk. Do you prefer traditional folk patterns, childlike simplicity, or full on animated energy? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let's discuss. I'll see you in the next one.